Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samuel64, and welcome to the RoboCast. I'm joined alongside.
And 9132 the Robotics Guru.
And Steve the American Killjoy.
I hope everyone enjoyed their holidays. We had a whole week. That was great. That was great. We are joined by some guests for the 9th episode of BattleBots 2019. Introduce yourself, guest number 1.
Hey, my name is Luke Bittenbinder, and I'm the team captain of Aberrant Robotics with P1 this season.
And guest number 2.
Hello, I'm JT. I'm also from P1, Aberrant Robotics.
Excellent. Welcome, guys. And it's so good
Hello.
to finally see your machine on the show. I have to, we've said it a number of times, but we were gutted we didn't get to see Parallax at all, really. Obviously, for better or for worse. But P1 is just gorgeous, and I'm so glad we finally get to see it. It's just wonderful. Thank you for bringing something different.
That's all right. I think credit to Luke mostly for it looking beautiful, because it really does.
It just looks like, I know Tim Rackers mentioned a few weeks ago that, the sparks at the back. I was like, surely it can't be like that in detail, but like, what, like, why go to that much detail? Like, obviously, I know every gram counts. Obviously, I know you want to put on a show. Go on, talk us through it.
I mean, if you can't build a robot that wins, it might as well look good, right? That's kind of the premise behind this.
I mean,
No, I mean, really.
Go.
The thing is, our robot's a fast wedge, right?
Yeah.
It's the kind of robot that they don't want to have on BattleBots.
Yeah.
Right.
There's pretty heavy stilt against robots like this. Even with a weapon, a flipper on it, it still gets classified with duck as, being one of the robots that the producers probably wouldn't want to have on the show. So, one of the ways that we got around that was with the special effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is sort of fair enough. I mean, like, I don't think, like, Greg or Trey have anything against robots like this necessarily, but, like, I can sort of see where they're coming from, and that, like, you could end up with a bunch of boring fights if it's just wedges bumping into each other. But
like from a spectacle point of view, it's a TV show at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've got to put on something for the cameras. Obviously, we didn't get to see your first fight. I don't know how much we can discuss because I think it's still currently just a supporter only fight. But we didn't see your first fight with Sidewinder. How much damage did you take from that? Like, obviously, what you can actually talk about. Like, obviously, we didn't get to see it, but was it pieces all over the floor, or was it just a case of, something going wrong?
Well, it looked bad to us during the fight, and luckily the damage wasn't quite as bad as we'd thought.
Yeah.
Although the weapon on Sidewinder packs quite a punch. I think everyone was taken aback by that.
That was
As
quite
we
impressive.
learned.
Yeah, but the robot was driving around in the test box like new about an hour after that fight. It was mostly cosmetic. Like the end of the flipper got bent up a little bit, and if you're a supporter, you might have seen one of the wheels came off. But we've got spares for all of those things. Like we just swapped the axle out, swapped the wheel out, put a new flipper plate on, and there was nothing else wrong with it. It just
The spoiler fell off.
Is this a spoiler?
Well, it was a spoiler.
No,
it fell off.
It
Fell off.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, come on. That was a rapid fire pun. Where? Oh.
Dear me. All right. Anyway, we'll discuss your fight a bit later on with Sub-Zero. Obviously, that was certainly interesting. We'll get to that a bit later on, but we'll crack on with the show itself. Obviously, we start off with two machines which I think kind of go a bit unnoticed as like kind of solid machines, but you don't really get to. As I say, they're not highly regarded as they should be in Huge and Gigabyte. Obviously, Gigabyte had a rough season last time. Huge, I think people still kind of treat it as a novelty, which it clearly isn't. It packs so much punch in that weapon. It's just, and the wheels now. Obviously, they've kind of gone for a nice blend of the saving weight in the wheels with the cuts in the side, and they're still fairly solid enough to flex. I think they've done a really nice job of just kind of meeting a nice balance of the two.
Yeah, it was a good fight. There's some caginess that we get to later in the episode where we learn that Jonathan Schultz measured up Gigabyte a little bit and decided which weapon he was going to use, which I think was strategic but a little dirty. But I mean, that's the way it goes, I guess. With Gigabyte, I did see the top being weak. I didn't expect Huge to run their weapon in reverse, but now it makes sense seeing the fight. I think we're over the point of saying Gigabyte is unreliable. I think last year was a fluke.
Yeah.
And I guess even the year before that when they brought in Vader, I think that was a fluke. 2 flukes make a trend, but I think this year Gigabyte really is the full deal this year, and I think they just got drawn up against the wrong robot this time. And Huge is just so hard to fight. All the electronics are in the middle. I mean, you're hitting the wheels, and the teeth on Gigabyte are so low. It was just the perfect fight for Huge, I think. And I just didn't see Gigabyte winning this one. But I mean, anything could happen. We've seen fights with Huge before with these powerful spinning energy weapons, and things can happen to Huge, but not this time.
No, I imagine for yourselves. JT and Luke, I imagine Huge is probably the worst robot ever to fight. I don't really know what you do to it, really. You just drive through it, or...
No. I think it might end up looking a bit like what Jasper did.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like a skateboard going over a vert ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually, we had some holes in the flipper arm that we were going to mount an anti-Huge weapon to if we were drawn up against them.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, because that's basically would be our only chance if we could snag through one of the wheels and try to control the match that way.
Yeah, I think kind of like Jasper did with the pole sort of thing.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, that's otherwise we wouldn't stand a chance.
Yeah, Huge is just such a it's fearsome. Like as you say, it's because it's so unusual to kind of there's no real way of reaching the main machine. It's just so ungamely. I love it. It's I say. Everyone compares it to Gabriel, and rightly so. It's just there's just nothing you can really think. Oh, yeah, this is an obvious strategy to do to it. It's wonderful. Being 2-1 as well now, both of them. I think Huge, considering their first opponent was Son of Whyachi, I think they can be very happy that they're at 2-1. Really.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Was there?
Go on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Was anybody worried about Huge losing late in this fight when it got stuck on the screws?
That would have been such a good... I mean, in fairness to Gigabyte, if they'd have won it like that, then fair play. I mean, no one's really kind of thought to put Huge there before.
Yeah, Gigabyte was doing the pushing in the late half of that fight. It was a tale of 2 fights.
That's one thing I like about Gigabyte, is that a lot of, shell spinners or full body spinners, they're just literally weapon and that's it. But Gigabyte can still, even when it's dead, his weapon's dead, can still come in and use good drive techniques and, try and get the job done that way. So
yeah. It's still got the drive power, like, just in case it needs it sort of thing.
And it was some bloody good driving. I think we can be on that.
They drove it really well. It was
definitely
fantastic.
It was enjoyable.
Yeah, they did a great job with that.
Gigabyte was robbed, wasn't really.
It really wasn't. It really wasn't. I think there's only one way that fight was going, especially considering Gigabyte was literally limping at the end. I see our predictions went out the window once again, Sam. Yeah, we're getting good at this. After 3 years, you'd think we'd get better at this, but
one more for me.
It's getting worse. Another one that gets worse, I think, for me, is the next fight between BreakerBox and Uppercut. I had BreakerBox that have this hands down, and
so did I.
That Uppercut blade is surprisingly potent.
At least Steve can share the distraughtness with us in this one.
I know. I really wanted BreakerBox because I was trying to figure out, should I pick BreakerBox over a spinner, because I've seen it fight spinners and it does really well. This version frustrates me because it's the drive that fails, and it's two fights in a row now where it's had drive issues. Yeah. I don't know if Luke or JT if you have any intel on that. Because it's frustrating to watch. I want to see BreakerBox do better. I don't know if it was motors or speed controllers or what.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
go on.
No, you.
No, you.
Pass that microphone.
I don't know. There you go.
Oh yeah.
After After all that was brilliant.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame because obviously it's been running for years and years. And I'm afraid I don't know what they changed. But it's making smoke.
It sure is. It sure is making smoke. Take nothing away from Uppercut though. They give out some big hits as well. I think they
wrecked their front wedge, didn't they?
I think it was from where it was repaired against Falcon as well. To be fair,
I suppose.
But it still took it out, took it apart again.
I think everyone was, like I said, we said this last time we saw Uppercut. We thought that Uppercut was a bit of a novelty machine, a bit of a joke, a bit of a laugh sort of thing.
Yeah.
No one really looked at it and took it seriously. I wouldn't have turned around and said it would be 2-0 at this point in the season. Is it 2-0?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, 2-0. Yeah. So I would never have guessed that in a million years at the beginning of the season. So fair play. It's Uppercut. It's good.
Yeah.
And you got to think from this team, this MIT Combat Robotics Club team that brought us a bot that didn't make the show in 2016 in the Dentist, and that was a completely different team at that time. So this is a completely different core of people here, and they're brought a lot more this time, and they're a lot flashier with their fire get up.
Yeah. Those outfits are something else.
That's really special. But it seems to have trouble getting up to speed. The weapon, though, I have a feeling that if they get box rushed, they're in a lot of trouble because their breaker box was in control. I thought in the beginning of this fight until they burned out.
Not really
Yeah.
the way you want the fight to end.
No,
They need Gary Cairns in there. That's what they need.
I don't know. I don't really know if there's anything more to add to this fight.
It was a good fight.
Yeah.
Very good fight.
Yeah, it was a good fight. I enjoyed watching Uppercut fly around the arena. It was good to watch. Anything more to add?
That's pretty much it. It was another one of those fights where it was a tale of two fights, but breaker box was in control in the beginning, and then Uppercut just finished the job. So the one that lasted, that was the deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
A funny insight I've got on this actually is that the blade on Uppercut, they have a couple of blades to choose from, and the one with the fist was originally just a joke. It didn't really.
Nah.
They were just going to put it on for display in the pictures and then swap it out for what they thought was the more effective blade.
Wow.
And it turned out the fist was actually the best one.
You're joking. I love that. I like when you don't expect something to kind of pan out. It is actually fairly good. That's great. I love that. Good old Uppercut there. So moving to 2-0. That's kind of crazy when you think about it.
One of those fights is Mammoth, and that fight is
Well, let's talk about Mammoth. That was a good segue. I like that.
Yeah.
That was well transitioned there.
Yeah, I'll try.
I thought as this fight went on, Mammoth got back into it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Go on.
I was just going to say I was quite surprised that Wan Hoo actually won this one in the end.
Me too.
But,
I thought this was very close.
Both judges' decision-wise, and the fact that I thought Mammoth was going to win anyway, because Wan Hoo hasn't really been that effective this season, has it? Let's be honest now.
It's been kind of hit and miss, but again, it is a new machine.
Like Federator, and one because it died.
Yeah.
Oh god, aren't they? Jeez, yeah, I just realised that.
Yeah.
And then you got
they lost
by
Shatter. Yeah.
Which to be fair, is no real. It's not like a, no disgrace in that, but it was nice to see the death drum actually doing something this time.
Yeah, it was chewing up those skis real nice, but as I say that it just seemed to be lacking something. I don't know what it is. Again, I don't know, gents, if you could tell us more if they were struggling throughout or.
Well, they were okay. Problem with that is that they were completely the opposite side of the pits to us, so we barely even saw them.
Fair enough.
Entire time, but it's I think they had some teething stuff at the beginning, obviously with the ground clearance at the front where they kept getting stuck. I think that the drive on there is absolutely insane, and it was just a case of as they went on, just taming it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think given another season, I think they could be really decent, really decent.
I think a big problem with Wan Hoo is that the disc doesn't really stick out very far, and we've seen robots, and I'm gonna bring up Sharkoprian. Sorry, Ed. But the blade didn't stick out far enough, and it would catch, but it's just a little tooth. You know what I mean? And Wan Hoo, I think, has the same kind of problem where it just doesn't have that bite, and that's a really important calculation when you're designing a spinner, because you have to assume the speed of your robot, and then the rotation, and then the length of the tooth, and it's all gotta work together. Otherwise, you're either gonna grind or you're just gonna miss. But with Mammoth, I mean, there's so many things to catch. I really was surprised that Mammoth lost this fight, but I'm not exactly against the decision. I see where the judges were coming from. I believe they were all 4-3. Was this the fight where all the cards were 4-3? I think they said that on the show. Yeah. And I was sad we didn't get to see Mammoth's flamethrower except for the beginning of the fight. I think something happened with that, whatever. But Mammoth was controlling the fight. But with the way that the judging is scored in BattleBots in relation to like a Spark tournament rule set, which is what's run in a lot of tournaments here, it's so damage heavy that you're not going to win with a non-damaging weapon at this point. You have to come
unless you dominate the fight, sort of thing.
Yeah, but you're gonna lose the damage points already. So there's 4 points already gone. There's 3 points already gone. You have to win both aggression and control unanimously. So you're kind of already putting yourself at a disadvantage without a damaging weapon. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't bring robots that don't have damaging weapons, because they're still entertaining. Mammoth is ridiculous, and you need that for TV.
Yeah.
But if you expect to win with it, it's kind of a fool's errand. And I love the fact that Ricky brought this thing, but I just don't think it has it doesn't have the capability of winning judges' decisions against something like a Wan Hoo, and it's a sin, because I think it really did control the fight.
It is a shame.
Yeah, I do agree with that, but I'd also add that I think if Mammoth had gotten any weapon hit on Wan Hoo, if Mammoth had flipped Wan Hoo,
Yes, definitely.
I think they probably would have won.
Right. They didn't use their weapon effectively. Like, they were just using it to slap them. They were slapping them with the trunk, and that really doesn't do much to Wan Hoo. It's so short. That's another thing that was worrying me, because Wan Hoo is such a little thing.
Yeah. It kind of was, like, the worst opponent for Mammoth, really, in lots of ways, because it's just, they couldn't... You look at a robot like Axe Backwards, yes, it's very small, but, like, there was bits you could kind of hook onto and kind of chuck over. Same with Uppercut as well. There were bits you could kind of grab a hold of and get a purchase on, whereas Wan Hoo's, because it's so low and it's kind of quite sleek and smooth, there's no real way, unless you get somehow under one of the wedge slits or something, I don't know, but...
It's like the Sears Tower fighting an ant.
Sure, that'll do. Why not? I mean, I will say as well, Mammoth, considering they started off, as we mentioned, beating Axe Backwards fairly comprehensively, I think it's kind of been a bit of a wake-up call going against, you know, your Uppercut and then Wan Hoo as well. It's just... They're a good, you know, it's obviously a decent machine. I think this is pretty much their limit, though, because, let's face it, Mammoth is not competitive in any way. It's just... But it's just wonderful. I love that. Anything more to add?
No.
No?
Cool. So let's
Resounding no.
Let's witness some bullying next up then. So
Okay.
Texas Twister has had a great start to the season, winning 2 fights. Son of Whyachi, bit of mixed fortunes, you know, kind of unlucky to lose to Whiplash in many ways. They got flipped over. What can you do? There's not much else they can do. There was no close fight here. They nearly out of the arena Texas Twister on the first hit. That would have been the best thing if they'd done that.
I love the driver's happy face. It was that's me every day at work, guys. That's it.
This was not a fight. This was bullying. There's no need for that.
Can I just say this at the beginning of this season for the podcast, when we did our predictions, we mentioned that I think all three of us mentioned that we didn't think Son of Whyachi was really going to make it to a top 16 this time around. We thought that they were slowly getting outdated. The time for them to shine had sort of gone, and then we see this fight. I think that kind of proved us a little bit wrong, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to take an L on that one. I'm not going to lie.
Twister got shagged, right? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah.
It looked like a slinky at the end of it, with your wheels not hanging off each end, the disc's gone, Fuzzy's hopes and dreams were crushed, bless him. I love it,
Yeah, this was, I mean, Fuzzy, from my perspective, it definitely seems Fuzzy likes using wheels as armor.
Yes.
And I think this fight was the worst possible scenario for that strategy.
Oh,
Yeah, as in, like, just like, you know, full body spinner with like as much energy as Whyachi. Just it was gonna hit the wheels, it was gonna bend them, it was gonna lock them up, and it did. So yeah, I mean, there wasn't really anything else Fuzzy could do.
No, I mean, it was either unless he got a hit in somehow before they split up, but that was never going to happen, really, was it?
You saying that, JT? I now want to see someone enter a robot with tires for its arm.
Just fully
And then please call it tiresome. Please, someone. It's got to be done. You know,
Somebody entered a Coulson wheel into a tournament over here, and it actually did okay.
so Chromalot was a wheel hub, so I guess that kind of counts.
2020 BattleBots champion is just a tyre. Who knew?
Tombstone to retire. Oh dear.
Alright. We'll leave that one right there. I think it's not a bad loss for Texas Twister. It's just just the scale of it was just kind of wow. I mean, it was just over so quickly. They never really stood a chance.
Yeah, Texas Twister got exposed in this fight a little bit. I think that farm technology got a little bit, as the Brits would say, shagged. But it's just one of those things where Fuzzy has this big blade, and he described it in the segment with Jenny before this fight, where it's a big shield in this configuration. But it's a shield that didn't spin up very fast in the beginning of this fight, and Whyachi was already up to speed and just charging, and I just didn't see it going any other way, unfortunately. I think Texas Twister had a really good fight against Black Dragon. God, who else did they fight? Oh, they fought Axe backwards. I just think when they fight a robot with the caliber of Whyachi, and I do think that we underrated Whyachi because of its past performance. It just seemed to lack that it factor for a while.
I think it's got it back now.
I think it's got it back now. But one thing that stops it is you got to, like, just the way Whiplash beat it. You got to really, like Fuzzy said, there's two ways to fight Whiplash. There's two ways to fight Son of Whyachi. There's many ways to fight Whiplash. There's two ways to go where you just got to get them and just go head on, or you got to make them break themselves. It's a tough ask for any bot, and I think welded steel wasn't going to stand up to Whyachi. But the fact is, their axles bent and their wheels bent, and they weren't going anywhere, and switches were hanging out, and it was a mess. But I think
it didn't look pretty.
No, but they'll be back. We know that. So
yeah.
I mean, they have a chance to end up with a 3-1 record, which I don't believe. But it may not be the strongest 3-1 record, so they might be maybe lower on the end of the top 16. Say they make it, but I have a hard time seeing them not make the top 16 if they win another fight. But they said in the episode where these are 2-1 records that are vastly different because of Whyachi's caliber of opponents as compared to Texas Twisters. So we'll see.
Yeah. Obviously, you chaps were there. You know, you watch a machine like Son of Whyachi. You know, it's got so much pedigree in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
everyone is using their switches. Everyone's used their shop.
Yeah. Like, how do you prepare for a machine like that?
That is a loaded question.
Yeah.
Just don't turn up.
Don't bother.
Yeah, don't pray, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just run the minibot.
Run away for 3 minutes and hope. Sure.
Suppose, yeah, just box rush them, I suppose. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think if we were going to fight them last season with the configuration we had, I probably would have backed into them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had quite a thick attachment that we could bolt onto the back end of P1. It was a half-inch thick AO 500 plate.
Oh gosh, that's fairly substantial then. Yeah, fair enough.
So I don't know. It would have been a toss-up between doing that and just, like JT said, just box rushing them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a shame we didn't get to see much of Parallax last season. I think it would have been nice to see it on TV. But you guys finally made it on TV this next fight, and I'm so happy we got to see it.
Oh, we're going to talk about that in just a bit. We're going to talk about Sub-Zero first.
I'm sorry.
Because they had that, that great segment. That great segment with Jenny. Obviously, they've all been very good this season. This one I really enjoyed, like, just breaking down the amount of just sheer carnage that Cobalt had ravaged upon poor Sub-Zero. And it was interesting to me that obviously they had a second, or they had a Shremek system in place which they had to remove because of weight restrictions. And then obviously they did manage to get it repaired just about. There was still another fight in Sub-Zero, and their fight was with you. Why don't you talk us through the fight?
Please. What you remember.
Well, we shagged it.
You got fully.
That's pretty much it then.
You got
Fully shagged.
What was going on with the drive in this?
I was saying,
thing?
I
noticed
noticed right from the start. I think it was your front left wheel just wasn't having it.
So there's a variety of factors that played into why P1 wasn't driving at its best. The biggest one was the configuration that we had on the drivetrain. So each wheel was independently driven. This was our first season with brushless. So, it was a bit of a learning curve for us to try to figure out that system. And we thought, having each wheel independently driven would be a benefit, because if a wheel gets jammed and knocked off, we don't lose the whole drive side.
Yeah.
That was a problem that we had last season. Something would jam on the drive, and we'd lose the whole side. But the arena had not been fixed since last season.
Yeah, it's been an issue for
becoming
a lot of
abundantly aware.
Yeah.
We've become abundantly aware of that.
This is pretty widespread knowledge now. With the whole meme on Reddit with arena wins another match, and all that.
Yeah.
But that affected us pretty heavily, because what happened was only 2 wheels would touch at any given point.
Jeez.
In the arena, it was so lumpy that you just have 2 wheels spinning in midair and 2 wheels pretty much stalled out because we didn't have enough torque with only 2 touching.
Like driving over a teenager's face.
Yeah.
The F1 car needed suspension.
It did.
It did, yeah.
It did.
Next year, lads, suspension.
Yeah.
No, funny thing is, we've actually talked about this.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So, I suppose the remedy to that would... sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think it was just because the spoiler fell off. That's probably what was
Wasn't enough downforce.
It wasn't enough downforce.
Downforce is, that was a big effect.
Important.
Sorry, JT, go ahead. Sorry, man.
That's all right. Actually, on that, the spoiler was supposed to fall off.
I was going to say, it looked like it was like some kind of sacrificial thing, wasn't it?
So it was held on with magnets,
okay.
which were only just strong enough to hold it on. So that, we obviously with the spoiler there, it's not invertible. So we're like, just have it fall off. Like, if we get flipped, we don't want to get beached. So just shed it as soon as possible. Basically, in hindsight, it did look unintentional. But there you go. Yeah, I suppose the remedy to the problem with the floor was just to gear it down a little bit more, which is something we've just had to learn by experience. And so, yeah, next season, bit more gearing down.
Sub-Zero was just
they were
over you.
They were. I'll be honest. This is the best performance I think I've ever seen from Sub-Zero, which is great to see because they've obviously worked really hard on an all new machine.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys, but it was nice to see it actually doing well for a change. It's a shame it was against your robot, but
yeah. No, I mean, to an extent, I definitely got the warm and fuzzies as well to see it actually doing stuff. Because if we're gonna get beaten, that was a pretty spectacular way to be.
And it's Jerry's last year too, so you want to see him at least go out with something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I have a soft spot for Sub-Zero. It's I like that style of flipper. I was a huge fan of Toro and all that back in the day. So it's nice to see it actually work this time.
Considering the opponents they've had over the last couple of years as well, I mean, let's face it, they've had Minotaur, they've had Cobalt this season, they've had Shredderator last year, I think they had Huge last year as well.
I mean, what did they do? Did they accidentally hit the car or something? I mean, for Christ's sakes.
Was it Ice Wave as well in season 2?
I think Ice Wave.
Yeah.
They must have
been a really cool fight.
I wonder if they've, pissed in Greg's coffee or something, and
Yeah.
like because I don't know, but you know, Sub-Zero have had a rough run of things, and you know, as much as it, unfortunate for
accidentally-
yourselves.
They accidentally called him Graham. I'll teach that bastard.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But you know, obviously, as much as it was against yourselves, I think you know it was nice to see Sub-Zero, you know, fully working and getting a win, and it was
Pick on somebody their own size though,
yeah,
please.
yeah, it was cool though to see you guys get toasted. It doesn't happen very often, so
Yeah.
that was good fun.
Yeah. That's all good.
Any obviously, I'm guessing there's a lot of work going on to kind of sort P1 out for next season. What was the main thing you kind of learned? You know, what needs to change to make it better for next year?
I put a vote in for an anti out of the arena device.
Make it a bit thicker.
Divine.
I put a vote in for flames instead of sparks coming out the back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be cool. Like, you know, like I'm talking like free shipping level of flames firing out the back of that.
That was actually a debate we had. We were going to have an exhaust pipe that had flames coming out of it.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
We thought, well, you know, the flames, there's a lot of weight and effort behind that, and we want to
Yeah.
have that just for aesthetics. So we kind of tossed that back
Fair.
and forth.
Fair enough.
Also, obviously the mini bot had flames as well, so
No.
Yeah. it
felt like
does.
if you can do sparks and flames, you know, mix it up a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Maybe next time we
table
put the sparks on the mini bot and the flame on the
on the big boy.
the flame on the big one.
Yeah. Nah, yeah. I'll be honest. You know, I think considering the problems that you clearly had, you know, with the drive as well, you did give a good account of yourselves, and I think you know you didn't, you know, you just didn't like turn up and just die straight away. At least you tried, you know, even with the wheels issues that you were facing. So I suppose that there's credit for that, but
Yeah.
it's a shame you didn't get the win this time. I'm really sorry.
But no, I mean, hats off to Sub-Zero, definitely. I mean, they put on a great show, and we're actually good friends with Alex, the driver of Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
So that was a fun dynamic that we had in that fight.
Sure.
Yeah.
And,
Him,
I
him
mean,
and
we,
him and his wedges.
He's way
Yeah. I mean, you know, we were obviously not performing at our best, but Sub-Zero was at their best, and that's always
Yeah.
awesome to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
With a prototype chassis and the ability to, the fact is that they didn't have their actual self-rider on this time. They had to use their flipper if they were going to get flipped, and they were worried about your yeeting plow. I've noticed
see
that.
that.
You can't hide that from me.
Yeah. Yeah, Luke, did you know they didn't have their self-rider? I didn't know.
I didn't even know they had a self-rider.
No.
So that was actually news to me
Not that
watching
it
this.
mattered.
No.
Yeah.
I was I mean, as much as it would have been maybe a good dynamic if you got underneath, obviously that never happened, sadly.
Yeah. I had a chat with Alex before the fight, actually. Just in case this exact scenario happened where the main robot got flipped out of the arena, what would be the most entertaining way for the mini-bot to go out as well? And it's a bit annoying because after the main bot gets flipped out of the arena, there's a good chunk of time where it's just the mini-bot and Sub-Zero in the arena just sort of dancing around each other, and then he flips the mini-bot, and I have the flame on, and it does what looked like an amazing like fire spiral thing as it like flew across the arena, and then it landed upside down, and then they flip us out. And so if you watch it, suddenly the mini-bot is upside down for some reason, and that's why. But I was really hoping to see that on TV, but they didn't put it in.
I think they put it on the replay briefly, but that was about it.
Very briefly.
Yeah.
Um,
God damn it, BattleBots.
yeah.
Should have left the fire on, burn their wires outside the arena.
Yeah.
There. Shame on them.
How rude. How rude.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll move on from Sub-Zero yeeting P1 in the end, as it turned out, to, well, I mean, this was...
What was this?
This was... oh boy. So the story goes on the grapevine that Nelly actually requested to fight Deep Six.
I had a feeling that this was the case because there's no way that they would put this fight together on a card. I was like, what? This feels really weird. And
Yeah.
they are counting.
They randomly selected it, and it just so happened that the gods were like in everyone's favor that day.
I would have loved to have bbeen sitting on the couches when they read out the fight cards and be like, Nelly, you're fighting Deep Six, and everyone's just like, what?
Everyone laughed.
I mean, to be fair, it was a good show for what it was. It wasn't the most amazing fight ever, but it was good fun.
Pure spectacle.
It was good fun.
I just want to say this much. In the replay, you see when Deep Six went over, I'm hoping that floor is over 18.
Oh my god.
That thing got penetrated severely by the girth and length of that blade.
Oh, I'm not being funny. Deep Six, it carved its way down into China with that bloody hit. It was amazing.
And what's really scary... I know, yeah, I was going to say, it literally just looked like it went through it like butter. It was ridiculous. I was like,
Yeah, they play the replays on the TVs in the pits, after the fight. They wind through some of the fights which have just happened, and the replay with Deep Six gouging the floor just went on a loop for ages and ages, and it just went round and round, and it was just an from everyone every time the blade went in, just for 10 minutes straight.
It was, I mean, the floor was bad enough, guys. Come on.
They've got to fix it for next season, surely.
I think there's definitely plans in motion.
Nelly got beached early.
Yeah, they did. They literally just drove straight out the gate. I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, I thought that was quite funny. They barely got out of the square. I was like, oh well, that's it. We're done then. and then they got half their face ripped off because
Oh.
It's very rare these days to get a double KO as well.
Yeah, that was a weird coincidence.
Yeah.
Of fate.
Just, got beat at the same time.
No! Hats off to the referee on I believe it was Deep Six's side, turning around and hang on, he said something. He completely fucked up his line. I can't remember what it was exactly he said now, but if you watch it back again, you'll know that he literally completely balls up the last word in that line. It's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, he basically looks at him. Yeah, he looks at him and says, "Well, we got that situation on our hands. What do we do?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good to see though. I think the Nelly team, I think they went into it kind of expecting to get wiped out. To be fair, but credit to them, they took a few hits. I think they'll certainly take that. And obviously the lights taking a pounding again. The budget for season 5 has gone down even more, which is a shame.
Oh, yeah. That literally shot me. My chin dropped at that one. Just all of a sudden, glass appearing on the floor. I was like, oh.
Considering the ears aren't very substantial. They're pretty lightweight by comparison to most plastics, and the fact that it got hit up so quickly was crazy. But Deep Six is at 2-0.
I was going to say, where do we rate that?
I don't know. My cat's having fun with the microphone as well, by the way.
Robots have gone undefeated this season. Bite Force, obviously.
Death Roll.
The
winner of our next fight.
Mm-hmm.
And
winner of our next fight.
Deep Six.
I mean, that's pretty impressive. Oh, an uppercut as well. Sorry, of course.
I think Scorpius as well. I think Scorpius is at 2-0 as well, isn't it?
I mean, obviously there's still a couple more fights to go, but you have to admit that's pretty impressive. To be considered one of those, on the same list as others. You have
to think as well. Deep Six's opponents so far have been Axe Backwards and Nelly, so it's not
true. That as well.
Currently, there's not much to write home about, but I'd say if they get a fairly decent sized scalp, like a team that's currently at say 1-1 or 2-1 or something like that, you got to start thinking Deep Six is slowly gonna sneak into that kind of position. Who knows? There's a long way to go, but they've certainly shown they've got destructive potential. I think that's very obvious by the the gaping hole that they left in the floor. Chaps, any more to add to this fight? I mean, obviously, it was good entertainment, but wasn't much of a fight, really.
It was spectacle. It was just spectacle.
Yeah, I don't know about the Nelly wanting to fight Deep Six. That might very well be true. But can we talk for a second how crazy it is that Nelly's first fight was not against Mammoth?
Yeah, I know. The two elephants.
Rainbow, which was almost certainly going to destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
It'd have been cool if they fought Mammoth first.
Yeah, I mean, considering all the shunt posting hype that we had leading up to this.
I know.
Nelly, isn't going to fight Mammoth. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe later on in the season.
Maybe.
What was it actually? I mean, obviously, when we've asked this question to a lot of people, a lot of them just said, "Oh, we were too busy working on robots, we didn't really see." When it came to Deep Six versus Nelly, did everyone just think, "Screw it, I want to watch that, then work on my own robot," or was it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Really, yeah.
What was the reaction to that massive hit? I mean, was it one of those moments where literally everyone in the pitch just goes, "Ah," or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Everyone lost their shit.
You got it right on there.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. It's hilarious. It always is great when you get like a mismatch of like, you know, they've got two machines that've got no right being in the same kind of bracket together, but it's still good for TV, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
John Reed would be happy with that good hit.
yeah,
I think.
it would be the as I think as Sarah quite rightly put it in the episode. If that doesn't get a good hit of the week award, then I don't know what will. We'll move on to the main event, which is this week between the two so far undefeated machines in Whiplash and Witch Doctor, and Matty's excellent driving skills couldn't quite get him out of this one. It was close, and I think, you know, as the fight went on, Whiplash again, as it tends to do, kind of starts to come back into the fight.
It's a bit like Wild Thing in that way.
I was watching the fight and I was thinking, this is very Wild Thing-esque, you know. But Witch Doctor's on some serious steroids this year. They're on such a good run.
Steroids. Get it right. Steroids.
Oh, sorry. But they're on a great run. They just seem so dialed in. It was fast around the arena. I've not seen Witch Doctor move like that for many seasons now. They were just like dominant the whole fight at the start. Obviously, as the fight wore on, they kind of started burning up, I think, batteries or motors or something. Something was on fire. It wasn't very happy. But
No.
as the fight went on, obviously Witch Doctor kind of ground down, but for the start, there was nothing Whiplash could do.
Well, it did something. It went flying a few times.
Well, it did, yes, it did.
It righted itself, got thrown around a bit more. You know, so it did do something. But
I'm amazed they got out the screws twice as well. That was great.
Yeah,
That was incredible.
That was impressive. That was awesome. Because those things like to screw with you.
You're not even trying anymore.
Mate, give me some slack, right? Come on. I've done 3 series of Robot Wars, 2 series of freaking BattleBots. We're on episode 9. I've had last 3 weeks off because I've been busy. It's my first one back for a while. Cut me some slack. Oh, and I have to work a Saturday shift.
Oh, no.
Well, you nailed it.
There you go. I will say, I think Whiplash was kind of hampered right from the get-go, because from what I saw, Witch Doctor kind of pushed them across the I don't know something got caught. Maybe it was just the disc got the wheel or something, but some of the tyre got shredded straight away.
Yeah, right in the beginning there was a piece of Whiplash tire just gone.
Yeah, I don't know whether that was floor or what, but something came off, and Whiplash just... Obviously, they got into the fight later on, but they struggled really early on. Yeah, I don't really know what to add to that.
Yeah, one thing I noticed about Whiplash, obviously they lost the disc early, and then you hear later from Matt that the chain on the lifter snapped again. They had that happen in the Minotaur fight.
Yeah.
And I hope this doesn't make a trend. I don't want to have Whiplash fights where the arm doesn't work, man. It's a sin. It's like you want to see, because he has said in episodes prior where the lifter really is the main weapon, and when that's working, they're controlling the fight. And you saw a couple times in this where Witch Doctor was on the ropes a little bit with that lifter in full swing. They got him clamped a couple times. They were driving him around. They had him flipped over late in the fight, and Witch Doctor had to get back over. But it was hard to not see all the damage that Witch Doctor had done early on in this fight, and see Whiplash really just not really what we're used to seeing from Matt. I know that they were trying to outdrive Michael lately, but he is all over the box. I agree with you, Sam. I have not seen Witch Doctor drive this well in such a long time, and against something like a Whiplash, it's a good thing to show the selection committee that your robot is not.
It's not a one-trick pony.
Exactly, it's no fluke. It's here to stay. It's 3-0 now. And I think I think it's fair to say I think Witch Doctor is completely out of their funk. Maybe not completely, because the smoke at the end was worried me. But I feel like they'll address that hopefully, because we've had a couple fights now where they've let out the magic smoke a little bit. But it really dished out hits. It really dished out hits, and I was happy to see it really give it all to a bot like Whiplash. I mean, there's nothing else to say. It was a good main event. I think it was the right main event fight for tonight.
Yeah. JT and Luke, or what? How highly can you rate a machine like Witch Doctor? When it's in this kind of form, how do you rate it?
I mean, I think Witch Doctor this season has really made the right choice with not doing too many redesigns.
Yeah.
It's very much an evolution from last season, and as we've seen in the past with other robots, that's usually a good choice to make as a team.
Yeah.
And as it played out for them this season.
I really like what they're doing actually with because obviously they're a vertical spinner, but they're not wedgy, if that makes any sense. As in, they're not fighting the ground game, as it were. It's not the race. It's not a race to the floor anymore for them. It's like they're just using the reach of their weapon, and I think that's sort of a bit of a new take, like on the whole vertical spinner 4-wheel drive meta that we're...
Yeah, because they all have feeder wedges, and I think you saw last year that Witch Doctor's feeder wedge almost hampered them in a way.
Exactly.
Like it didn't really provide them with an advantage in those fights.
Yeah, so they've sort of gone with these flat panels this time, and like I really like that, honestly. And Death Roll are doing a sort of similar thing as well. I really like Death Roll as well, in that they do have these little wedges, but they don't need them, and they don't always run them. They're just the reach of their weapon is all they need, and yeah, I quite like that.
Yeah, I did finally catch up on King of Bots, and man, I really should have rated Death Roll higher. I know it was fighting first generation Chinese robots, but Great White was scary in that series, and I think they were very unlucky to lose. But yeah, back to Witch Doctor. Yeah, I do see the semblance there, where the idea is that you have your fist out front basically, and you're not hiding it behind a defensive wedge. It's out there and it's ready to do the business.
Yeah, and I think a team like Hypershock as well. They've kind of evolved rather than revolved, if you like, and they've done so much better this season because of that. They look like a much more complete package. Whereas same with Witch Doctor, they've not gone away and redesigned the wheel. They've kind of just adapted it to their needs.
You see a lot of teams, even just on this fight card, where Huge doesn't really look a whole lot different. It's a lot more refined.
Yep.
Gigabyte, obviously a lot more refined. Whyachi, I guess
Sub-Zero's
something
kind of the exception, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say for Whiplash as well, it's not a bad loss. They were,
not at all.
They took this fight, which had no right going to the judges.
I thought one of them would die, but it just wasn't the case.
No,
you just can't kill Whiplash, can you?
Unless you bite force.
Unless you bite force. But to be fair, bite will probably kill anything.
Yeah.
Including Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee rolled into one.
Oh no, we're back in 2008. But I will say with Whiplash,
deal with it.
It's just obviously we've spoken to Matt a couple of times this season. I think this is a great loss for them because Witch Doctor's obviously on an upward trajectory at the moment. Whiplash, they fought two very tough opponents in Minotaur and Son of Whyachi. I honestly think they could lose their next fight and they'd probably end up in the top 16, no problem.
Maybe, yeah. I do worry about that. I think this is a turning point in their season where it yes, they did lose to a really easily, Kenny says top 4 contender. I put them maybe at, like top 3.
Top 2.
I mean, top 2. I mean, whatever. But it's not a bad loss. I agree.
Yeah, I think there's certainly scope for them there. Unfortunately, there's no Science Channel for the majority of the rest of the season. I think now I think we'll cover the rest of the fights when they appear later on this year. Which
we did that last year with BattleBots Basement on its own episode, so we'll figure it out.
We'll do the same thing with the Science Channel fights this year. But that does
the two ones.
I know, but that does bring us to the end of the episode. And I have to say, JT and Luke, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No worries.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's awesome.
No worries at all.
We'll fly next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing more of P1 hopefully later this season. We'll have to see how that pans out.
Yeah. Any chance we can plug some sponsors?
Go right ahead. By all means, we're always game to do that.
We want a 50% cut.
And, plug away, guys. Plug away.
Okay. Yeah. Where do we start, Luke?
Yeah. So I mean, big shout out to all of our sponsors this season that made it happen. Clemson University for being one of our biggest. and then SolidWorks, Cheflu Group, Big Blue Saw, Labman, where you currently work, JT.
Yeah, in fact, I'm in Labman at the moment. I'm sitting in a conference room at Labman, dressed as a cowboy.
I love that. What?
There's
Wait, what?
Well, we have a summer party instead of a Christmas party, and it's currently a summer party, and it's fancy dress.
Love that.
So, there we go.
That's the thumbnail. Dear me. Well, obviously, thank you to all the P1 sponsors. Obviously, you put together a fantastic looking machine. There's no debating that. Performance aside, even in this fight, the machine looks fantastic, and I really hope you guys come back again next season because I want to see you guys perform at the highest level you can because it looks like a competent design. I just want to see you do it.
We don't see front hinge flippers much anymore.
Exactly.
It's such a rarity. It's kind of a design that's fallen by the wayside, and I think it still could be effective.
I mean, I love front hinge flippers. Anyone who knows me knows that. And I love racing car shaped robots, so I love that as well. And you guys put them both together. Thank you. I mean, I'm a huge fan of GBH2 from Robot Wars, and this is GBH2 on steroids by the looks of things. So yeah, just a few more flames, and I'll be happy about it.
Yeah,
but I'll sponsor you if you do that.
Fantastic.
There we
I'll
go.
write up a contract.
Let's talk about this.
Anyway,
That's get much, but
you can have Anderson's soul as payment. With that said, I've been Sam Bennett 64.
I've announced no one to do was Guru.
I've been Steve the American Killjoy.
I'm Luke.
I'm JT.
This is always the fun part. It's like,
It's so awkward at the end. It's like, how do I do this?
Here we are with all our online personas, and we have grown-ups on who just go by their normal names. What's that about? Jeez.
And well, the three of us at least will probably see you next week for the 10th episode of the 2019 BattleBot season. We'll see you then. Bye bye.